It's time now for our second look through the day's newspapers, and for that I'm joined once again this morning by Erin Ogunki. And Erin, we're starting here in France with that national ceremony for the soldiers killed in Mali last week.
That's right, Thomas. President Emmanuel Macron will preside over the national memorial service held at Les Invalides for the 13 of those French soldiers who were killed in Mali. And that, of course, was the single largest loss of life for French soldiers in nearly 40 years, since 1983. So as this article in the Union paper points out, the president has said he wants the ceremony to really be a moment of national unity, is focusing on, amid big strikes that are expected later this week, that this will kind of be a time for reflection and for everybody to unite and kind of unite in grief and in homage and tribute to those soldiers. So it's public to the extent that Parisians can kind of stand along the Pont Alexandre III bridge and see the procession pass there on its way to Les Invalides.
Now, have these types of ceremonies always been open to the public?
No, it's actually relatively recent, Thomas. Actually, the trend kind of started in 2011. So as this article here in the Christian paper La Croix points out, it started public ceremonies paying tribute to fallen soldiers in 2011 when veterans associations actually wanted to have a ceremony for soldiers killed in Afghanistan. That one was held on the Champs-Élysées, but it's become a tradition ever since. And the author of the piece points out that it's really important actually for the families of the fallen soldiers to see that the public is there to recognize their sacrifice.
OK, let's move on now to the UK, where the Prime Minister has been accused of exploiting last Friday's attack on London Bridge for political gain.
That's right, Thomas. We'll start with this cartoon, hopefully get that up there, where there it is. Ben Jennings. You can see, by Ben Jennings, you can see Boris Johnson placing an encouragement to vote for him next to flowers and notes that have been left there for the victims on the bridge at the site of the attack. So that kind of just encapsulates what the criticisms are of his attitude at this time. You can also see it in the headline of today's Guardian paper, the PM accused of exploiting deaths in the terror attack. So the author of the article saying that the Prime Minister even ignored one of the victims' family members' request that he not politicize the attack. Nonetheless, Boris Johnson claiming that a, quote, lefty government was responsible for the attacker having been freed from prison. He also said, as this article points out in a long TV interview, that the attacker was released as a part of an early release scheme that he says was put in place by the Labour Party. But as the article explains, it was a lot more complex than that. They said the attacker had originally been jailed in an indeterminate public protection system in 2012, a system that the Tory government had actually scrapped that year.
And what's being done now to avoid similar scenarios, Erin?
So as the Daily Mail says, and several other British papers are actually talking about this, last night police made their first arrest on a blitz on some 74 people who were convicted on terrorism charges and have since been freed from prison as a part of that early release program. So we can see the faces of those individuals there. The person that they arrested last night had actually been jailed and released at the same time as the attacker who carried out last Friday's attack. So they're at least trying to get their hands back on those people who have already been convicted and released.
OK, let's change gears now and look at a story coming out of Malta this hour, where the Prime Minister has announced that he's stepping down.
That's right. Joseph Muscat, the Prime Minister of Malta, has said that he is going to step down, but he's ignoring calls for him to do so immediately. He has instead opted to resign in January once a new Labour Party leader is elected to replace him.
And this is, of course, related to the killing of the journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. Exactly.
The investigative journalist was murdered in a car bomb in October of 2017. She had been investigating corruption in the highest levels of Malta's government. And so her family also has called on the Prime Minister to step down immediately because they want to make sure that he doesn't interfere any further in the investigation.
Let's end with something a little bit more positive, Erin. Scientists have found a way to repair some of the world's damaged coral reefs.
That's right, Thomas. Ocean lovers and scientists and environmentalists are desperately looking for ways to reverse the effects that I'm sure we've all seen of climate change on coral reefs. So as this Washington Post article points out, British and Australian researchers have found quite an orthodox way of saving these coral reefs, and it consists of broadcasting the sound of healthy reefs to dying ones. So this requires them to obviously capture the sound of healthy reefs, which is the sound of fish and kind of life happening there, and then placing huge speakers in the dying reefs and broadcasting that sound. The thought behind it is that the sounds of living reefs in the dying reefs will encourage fish and life to return to those dying reefs there.
Okay, Erin, thank you very much. Erin Ogunkiya there with the latest press review. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas.